Well, welcome everybody. This is the session that we're talking about making a strong case for forest economics as part of our NACD Forestry Resource Policy Group. As I think most of you all know, without having a strong forest market, it really diminishes the amount of forest management work we can do on sites. If we encourage this to be interactive, if there's questions or comments or success stories, those kind of things, if you'd put them in the comments, we can follow up at the end with those. And hope you enjoy the session. Our first speaker is going to be Joe Fox. I've had the pleasure of knowing Joe for over 20 years. He's currently the state forester for the state of Arkansas. In his previous roles, he's also been a forester for the Nature Conservancy. He grew up in a family sawmill business, and actually he's probably one of the few state foresters who's actually been on a conservation district board in his earlier career. So Joe, welcome, and I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Okay, thanks, John. I can sum this up in about 30 seconds, and I think everybody would understand if anybody wants to take a nap besides me. This is a great subject, and I'm pleased to see this audience. I see my friend Scott Phillips from South Carolina sitting over there. Hey, Scott. I learned the phrase and plagiarized the phrase, healthy markets equal healthy forests, from Scott's predecessor, Gene Kadama. First place I heard that from South Carolina. Rick Cantrell's on here somewhere, and Rick is the staff lead for the National Association of State Foresters Forest Markets Committee, which works with the committee that I chair, the Forest Resource Management Committee, again, of the National Association of State Foresters. And we've worked together, the two committees have, on this idea of healthy markets equal healthy forests. So there's some interesting numbers that I've learned in preparing for these comments. And one is that or several are, the United States has about 800 million acres of forests in the country. That's about 33% of the country. And I'm going to compare these numbers with my state, from Arkansas. We have almost 19 million acres of forest land in Arkansas, which is about 56% of our state. The U.S., of the U.S. numbers, 800 million acres, 56% are privately owned, which leaves obviously 44% government owned, mainly the federal government, but federal, state, and local governments. Of the 50%, 56% private in the United States, about 38%, or 38% of the total, are small private landowners. In Arkansas, we've got about 81% private, and 56% of the total would be small private, and 19% of our forest land in Arkansas is owned by the government, mainly federal government. And I like to brag, I'm not sure it's bragging, but I think it is. Arkansas has the most national forest land in the United States, wait for it, east of the Rocky Mountains, east of the Rocky Mountains. So the eastern United States, we've got two fairly large national forests, the Ouachita and the Ozark St. Francis, that we depend on and we love. So of those kinds of numbers, 800 million acres and 56% private, 90% of the removals from America's forests come off of private land. 90% comes off. So less than, really, right at half of the America's forest lands are productive. And further interestingly, about the annual removals rate in America is about 150 billion board feet, 150 billion board feet. And that's down today. That's the current number. But in 1986 was the high for removals at 240 million billion with a B, billion board feet. 240 billion board feet in 1986. And what are we, 35, 34 years later, we're down considerably to 150 billion. So to this crowd, I'm singing to the choir. I get that, but what do forests do? Why do we have forests? Why do we need forests? Well, for several reasons, but to protect water. 53% of the country's drinking water comes from forests. Begins in forests. 53% comes from forests. Forests store carbon. Currently, our growth in America, about 15% of carbon emissions are offset annually by forest growth. And then, of course, clean air. Trees clean the air, store the carbon, clean the air, gives off O2. We all know that. And I hadn't even started talking about the aesthetics, recreation, especially wildlife habitat in the South, and I think it's true across the country. I know it's true in Arkansas. The number one objective of forest landowners is for wildlife habitat and recreation. That's the number one objective. Not making money, not selling products, wood products, but hunting and wildlife habitat's number one. And it's really number one by far. Number two is not even close, and wood product production is not even number two. So what is it that we need to be doing? Why are markets so important? Well, I don't know if any of you have tried to have a pre-commercial thinning or tried to work out the small timber underneath the stand, but it costs somewhere, in my state at least, somewhere between anywhere from $350 to $500 per acre for timber stand improvement through a grinding machine or a pre-commercial thin. If we did not have our forest markets, we wouldn't have a good paying way to thin the forest. And we all know that if we don't thin the forest, then the good Lord will. We'll have fire, we'll have insects, we'll have wind, we'll have floods, we'll have natural disasters that cause those disturbances that come when we don't manage the forest. And my years with TNC, which I enjoyed immensely, taught me, and I was able to teach them a little bit coming out of the sawmill business, working for the Nature Conservancy. I think I was the second or third forester they had ever hired anywhere in the Nature Conservancy as far as production forester. In any case, thinning it, all we do when we thin, even a clear cut, but I'm thinking about thinnings mostly, we're just emulating nature. A tornado is a clear cut. A big ice storm event can be a thinning. Can be a clear cut too if it's heavy enough ice. A big fire emulates a clear cut, and there's some plants that only express themselves with completely open sunlight. So folks like the Nature Conservancy like thinning, and really, especially in the South, but I think you can cover all of the United States, fire and thinning are the two major tools we use to have a healthy forest, to reach those landowner goals. So we've got to control stand density, or otherwise there's going to be a disturbance that we don't control, and it's going to put a lot of smoke in the air, obviously. So if we don't have markets, what are landowners going to do? If landowners don't have a place to sell trees or be paid to grow trees, they're going to put their land in other uses. So that's probably the number one threat for lack of markets, is conversion to other uses. And anybody that knows about real estate and development prices knows that forest land prices, whether it's got a stand of timber on it or not, does not compete well with real estate development prices. So we've got that pressure, but we've got the pressure of trying to figure out how to reward landowners. Looking at carbon, the one thing I skipped over, and I wish I hadn't, because we're not cutting our growth, and remarkably so in Arkansas, we're not cutting the growth. Our numbers here, we're growing more than 20 million tons annually, more than removals, and have been doing that now for several years here in Arkansas. And we're having record severance tax collections, and that's based on the removals. So 2 out of the last 3 years here in Arkansas, we've had record severance tax. That's about 24 million tons, and we've got 20 million tons more growth than we're removing. So in some decades from now, 2 or 3 decades, we're going to be in trouble. We're going to have dense forests. That's going on everywhere. We are storing more carbon, which I've already 15% of carbon emissions annually we can offset, but our carbon storage is declining. And it's predicted that somewhere around 2040, that's 20 years, just 20 years from now, the carbon storage will decline. We'll have less carbon stored if we don't change something, if we don't change the growth, we'll have less carbon stored. Those kinds of things are all tied to markets. Without markets, we can't manage our timber. So everybody knows about paper and lumber and maybe even pellets. I want to talk a little bit about paper. Here in Arkansas, we're just had an announcement yesterday of losing another paper machine in Ashdown, southwest Arkansas. It's a big machine, and they're going to replace that and sell pulp. So we're not going to lose that source of revenue for pulpwood, but our big plant, 1962, Georgia Pacific had the largest wood producing facility in the world in Crossett, Arkansas. And there was a paper mill and a sawmill and a plywood mill, several different things there. Well, almost none of that's left, and the paper mill was entirely shut down this last fall, late fall. And we've lost that output or input of pulpwood to for South Arkansas. It's our pulpwood markets here have just about collapsed. They're not very good. So we're real worried about small diameter trees and what we're going to do with them. We've got 3.4 million acres of pine plantations just in South Arkansas, and not enough places for that pulpwood to go. We can do something with the logs, small logs, but there's not a whole lot with the pulpwood. Well, that brings up the problem of what are we going to replace, especially some of these small diameter products with. And there are several things being developed. I've already mentioned pellets, which comes and goes a little bit, but cellulosic biofuels are a possibility that people are looking into. Biochar, torrefication, cross-laminated timber, mass timbers in particular are getting a good look here in Arkansas. Probably have heard of the big Walmart project. They're building a 600-acre campus in Bentonville, Arkansas. They want to build it out of cross-laminated timber. So Walmart's helped Structure Lamb from Canada come into Conway, Arkansas, which is central Arkansas, redo a steel plant, actually, steel fabrication plant, into a cross-laminated timber plant. That'll use lumber from Arkansas, and that'll help our lumber markets. And cross-laminated timber is a great way to build a building. It cuts down on the labor by 2/3 of the labor of a regular concrete steel building. New products like cross-laminated timber, mass timbers, and then this nanotechnology, which has some more development to happen, but I don't know if you've seen there's a way to make water bottles that look like plastic water bottles out of cellulosic fuels, cellulosic material. So we can make water bottles, plastic soda bottles out of wood. we need to be doing that. I had a kind of an interruption Sunday night, happened to watch the 10 o'clock news on our local CBS channel. They did a national feed kind of a thing, and it was all about how the run on toilet paper was denuding the forests of Canada. That if we're going to have to find something else to make toilet paper out of, because we're clear cutting the entire forest of North America for all the toilet paper. Well, I can't tell you, the last time I yelled at the TV like that was when there was a bad call in the Tennessee-Arkansas football game. I hollered, and I don't think they heard me, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Some of the problems in the Western U.S. are strictly due to the lack of markets for landowners to sell their timber. If you don't have any place to sell your timber, you let it grow, it gets too thick. Insects like the mountain pine beetle, in their case, come in, kill the stands, the sticks are up in the air, dead trees, and fire comes eventually, and you can't stop the fire with all that fuel. So markets are an incredibly good tool for forest landowners to use to thin and control the density of their forests and therefore have a healthy, resilient forest. And the last thing I want to say is none of that happens without collaborations like state forestry agencies have with their conservation districts. We work here in Arkansas with the Arkansas Association of Conservation Districts and individual districts. That's part of the way we reach landowners for the Forest Stewardship Program, for Stevens grants, for several things we can do to help landowners plan and have the tools they need. EQIP practices come through collaborations with conservation districts. Arkansas is one of the best, maybe the best collaborative state in the union, of course, after South Carolina. And the way we do it is with a lot of partners, whether it's our Game and Fish Agency, whether it's the U.S. Forest Service, whether it's Arkansas Forestry Association, or whether it's the Arkansas Association of Conservation Districts. We all work together for those landowners so that the landowner can reach his or her objectives. Without markets, there's no way to reach those landowner objectives. There's no way to keep the air clean, the water clean, and store the carbon. So with that, I believe, Mike, I can end and we can have questions or go to the next speaker.
Joe, thank you. I think we'll go to the next speaker and we'll do questions at the end here. Kyle, are you on?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. Okay,
Okay.
Kyle Fredrickson is a forester for the district in Aitkin County, Minnesota, and he works with reaching out to landowners and helping write management plans and with the forest certification up there. Kyle, I'll let you take it from here.
Sure, thanks a lot. Yeah, like you said, I'm here writing forest stewardship plans, and basically I like to think of myself as kind of an ecologist that stumbled into the world of forestry and then tripped into a world of policy and economics and outreach and all the other things that we're involved with here. So I also started working, I started working for this district about a year ago, and had no idea of what certification was until I started. And now I'm managing their certification program for that's linked with Forest Stewardship Council. I'll try and give you an outline of what I want to talk about here. I'll give you a history of what we've done, the goals related to that, kind of the ups and downs and the challenges we've had and the roles that we've tried to fulfill, some solutions we've come up with, and then leave you with some takeaways and hopefully give everyone a lot of time to have some questions of any gaps I fill in. The history is that here in Aitkin, a lot of the public lands were certified. Starting around the 1990s, this was all pretty much law of the land, and private owners started getting interested in that. And our district tried to fill in that gap by offering an umbrella certification so that private landowners could get involved in certifying their products. And this was third-party certified, originally through Dovetail Partners, went through Rainforest Alliance, and then to currently NEPCON is the people that are the third-party certification body. Originally, we set this up so it was free for landowners, and that was covered over from an audit, or sorry, from a grant that we got some money for to cover the audit costs. And those audit costs are around $5,000 for the year. And then we started bumping up our charges for the landowners. So we got up to $25 on a landowner, and then now we're currently up to $100 per landowner to help offset some of those costs. The goals there were to fit with our district's goals of land management, landowner assistance, follow those Forest Stewardship Council guidelines for best management practices, make it economically viable over the long term for our district, for the landowners, for everyone involved, help promote that. Sorry, my computer just died. Is everyone still with me?
I think we can hear you.
Great. Sorry, the video must be gone, but if you can still hear me, I'll keep going. And most importantly with our district was that water quality and relating it to forestry. A lot of the positives, it started out, the things were great. Local business were paying premiums for their certified wood. We had local pallet companies using our wood to ship products all over the world with sustainable branding on it. The county land department was promoting certified products. Things were gaining momentum. This was just a lot more than just a feel-good program. This was our forest products, you know, certified sustainable forest products coming from our beautiful county, from private, public lands, getting sent all over the world. So things were going great. Then 5 years later, the market started shifting. The demand for certified wood declined drastically. Paper mills are shutting down. There was just less products getting used that we were producing. So we were all geared up, ready to go, and then the market just kind of fell apart on us. So that's been a challenge. Originally we had about 20 members, and being that the costs were around $5,000 a year for us, we were hoping that things would keep increasing, that the market would demand more certified lumber, people would start developing more interest in it, landowners would get more involved, and we would create more and more people. Our target was to get 50 landowners, and now we went from 20 originally down to about 16 this year. And so there's been kind of this slinky effect on the market where the consumers and producers are demanding certified products. The Stewardship Council was focusing on providing those, and then the markets just haven't linked up right. And I think if we can find that right balance, we're going to be coming in pretty well. But right now, that's demand for certified wood is not strong. Local distributors I've talked to have said basically that there's just too many hoops for them to jump through. So with that lack of local interest, it's been making it pretty tricky. I know there's a pretty strong demand for certified wood in more urban areas related to higher end architectural firms, but in our area, it's pretty rural, not necessarily a strong economic force to pay for the extra costs involved. So our role as a district was to do what we could to promote that certified wood, hope our landowner base would grow, but it's been small, and these smaller timber harvests are pretty complicated to organize. But we've constantly trying to market the group, promote non-forest timber products, and we're going to keep doing that as long as we possibly can. One plan that we have is to work with the Aitkin County Land Department. They have a database set up for their timber management sales, And the goal is to link our landowners with those sales so that those previously unmanaged lands or unmanageable, economically not viable to managed lands will be linked and kind of ride the coattails of the state sales, so that we can get that wood out and people can get their products out easier. We figure that basically what we need is, you know, to promote and focus on education and outreach for the certification. In our area, not a lot of people pay any attention to it. Folks will go to the store, see a product, and buy whatever's cheapest. It's not like in Europe where there's a demand for certified sustainable products. Here in our area, at least, and from the folks that I know, economics is the main driver, and people are going to pay as little as they can for products. So some takeaways I have, this is a kind of an expensive process for our district. There's definitely benefits that are farther than just economics. We can help folks get things cut. There's example of a landowner that was he could not get about 10 acres of his wood cut, but he found a logger that was looking for certified products, and that made it possible. Basically, he needed some certified wood in his pool, and made that cut possible that previously would not have been logical for him to cut. So generally, the certification is not really a moneymaker for our area. It's much more than that. It's folks working together, knowing that their lands are certified, third-party certified, so that they can have some pride in their products and show that their lands are managed in the most sustainable way. And that's basically, we figured for this to work, we need about 50 landowners for us to break even and to have enough interest for it. Seems to be really taking off, and that those landowners should be paid at least about a 10% premium on their certified products to make it worth them paying in for the certification. So right now we're looking at it. Folks are they're just involved right now because they know that having that certification stamp shows that their forests are managed correctly, and they're proud to do that. They're happy that they're doing what's good for the land, for wildlife, for water quality. Everything's linked to third-party standards that show this is the right way to do things. It's not just Kyle as a forester or whoever's kind of opinion on it. It's a set of standards that are checked and proven that it's a good way to go about managing the forest. Yeah, I don't know if I rushed through anything or if I left enough time for people to have questions.
Thank you, Kyle. I'm looking at our comments. We do have a couple questions. First one is to Joe Fox, and Joe, Gary Blair was asking about the carbon markets and price paid to landowners and what efforts are in Arkansas to attract these new markets.
Well, sadly, there's not much going on in carbon markets in Arkansas. And I answered on the chat, but I know of one place and only one place that's been paid anything for storing carbon, and that's a large conservation easement in South Arkansas owned by PotlatchDeltic. The land is, the conservation easement is with the Arkansas Game and Fish Commission and the Arkansas Natural Heritage Commission. But Potlatch was paid by the California Teachers Retirement CalPERS. I don't think I can remember all of the the name, but the teachers retirement system from California paid a sizable sum for their management on that conservation easement, long-term pine timber management. I think it's either 60 or 70-year rotation that they were paid to do. It was a pretty lucrative thing between the no development conservation easement and different kinds of management. It's mostly pine ground. Potlatch Delta was paid handsomely, and they still own the property and can manage the timber and cut timber and do it in more old style management than plantation. Anyway, that's the only one I know of in the entire state, John, unless you know of one.
No, I don't know of any other successful projects at this time on timberland. The next question for you, Joe, also is from Tom, and it's to engage the next generation of forest landowners that will inherit the land. Do you see a lack of transparency in timber prices as a communication hurdle? The young generation demands price discovery at their fingertips, as with timber, and that's not happening currently. Timber Mart South and other vendors are not localized or no real time and require subscriptions.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I also answered that one on the chat, and that the lack of timber pricing transparency has gone on as long. I'm not a young generation guy, and it's gone on in the business as long as I can remember. And of course, we work pretty hard, or timber industry people work pretty hard not to collude on pricing. So there's a dangerous legal side to that one that we all have to be careful of. Having said that, I think the Tom's right. We have the young generation coming up. We're all kind of what I call the McDonald's generation. We expect to drive up to the window, order our sandwich, and in 30 seconds have it paid for and gone. And trees don't work that way, and a lot of things don't work that way. But the idea of passing ownership to generations is a good reason why timber landowners, forest landowners need a professional, a trusted professional, to advise them on their management, how to reach their management goals. Forest land ownership ought to be, it's not always, but ought to be a hands-on operation where the owner understands and walks through their land and has a trusted, long-term trusted friend, a forestry professional to give them advice. So I think the whole question is an advertisement for why you need a forestry professional.
Thank you, Joe. The next question we have is probably both you and Kyle can probably look at some of this, is what are some of the resources to help those, us educating the urban districts to help move some of these projects forward?
Kyle, why don't you go first? Don't see Kyle. Well, John, repeat the question for me, please, sir, one more time.
What are some of the resources to help some of the educate some of the urban districts to move projects forward, some of these forestry projects? I think some of that, Joe, would be like some of the urban forestry outreach that the Forestry Division does in Arkansas that I'm aware of.
Well, it depends on what state you're in, but I think every state has some sort of urban forestry staff. In Arkansas, we have 2 dedicated people, but we have at least seven others. We have 7 districts. The state divided up into districts. We have an urban forestry specialist in each of those districts. That's not that person's only job, but the 2 staffers help them. We're organized into an urban forestry council. Many of the cities in Arkansas are on that council, and several cities have some urban forestry staff. So depending on where you are, see if there's a city forester, a city urban forester, or call your state forestry agency, and they can help you with advice and resources. So we have some federal grant pass-through resources to do several urban forestry things, including a urban forest inventory, things like that. How to get tree ordinances done in your city council. A lot of how-to things on organizing urban forestry, and almost by its definition, you have to organize urban forestry and have a lot of people ready to co-manage their trees. Urban forestry is quite different from rural forestry. I'm not going to go too far into that. I'm more of a rural forester, but urban forestry is more about the individual trees than it is forest stands. That's probably the major difference.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with Joe. Urban forestry is definitely another animal. It's nothing I really work with either, so I wish I had a better answer for anyone. But
well, there are quite a lot of resources, so just call either your local urban forester or the county forester that works for the state. They can generally put you in touch with somebody or some programs.
That, and I think one additional thing is that when we talk to some of these urban folks, is to make them let them understand that forest management, even if we clear cut a stand, there's more trees planted back, and it's controlling, and it's just a part of a crop. That is not the end of the world when something gets harvested and replanted. Absolutely.
And I'm actually currently working on I have a film background and working on showing the kind of the progression of forest management over the time frame. So, you know, it's the goal is to show folks that these are not permanent changes. You cut a tree and it will grow back, and it has all these benefits during its stage of regrowth. And the idea of the video is a combination of on the ground and drone footage to show how that kind of unmanaged forest was falling apart, and show the kind of the issues that the health and wildlife decline that it had seen over, you know, once it reaches its peak maturity or over maturity, and then show the progression through the new growth and then up until that next rotation age. So I've been going around filming these different stands and showing and having a seasoned forester narrate kind of what's going on the ground. And that video is aimed at urban environment or urban audience.
Well, thank you, everybody. I know we got a few minutes left still here. Joe, I quickly went through, I couldn't find how many acres we've been planting in the South on average for the last, say, 10 to 15 years, but I found some older data that would indicate about 1.5 million acres being planted every year. And I did just some quick computer models to figure out what it cost a landowner to postpone thinning for 5 years, the first thinning. And that number's about $100 an acre is what it cost them in a net present value. And so you can think about it, if some of these, is this costing the landowners have to postpone thinnings for the small diameter wood, $160 million a year of lost net present value on their forest.
Yeah, the slowing down of growth is the biggest thing. And it's pretty interesting. If old sawmiller like me, the slower grown the pine, the better quality of the tree. So there could be some good that comes from this if those stands can be thinned. If they're thinned by a southern pine beetle, then it's going to be awful. It's going to be absolutely awful. One other thing you made me remember in Arkansas, and this has a direct connection to conservation districts. In 1978, there were 17.8 million acres of forest land in Arkansas. Today, it's just under 19 million acres. And the over a million acres that got planted from 78 to 2020 generally were WRP, CRP, WREP, CREP, those cost share programs coming from RCS. That's where those acres came from. And that's directly, obviously, related to conservation district work. So getting the word out about to urbanites about good forest practices in the rural scene. All of the work that we do in forest management needs good communications. And conservation districts are the connection to the people, to the landowners. And that's why communications and collaborations are paramount in our work now. If we're going to be able to manage the forest like we want to, the public needs to understand how forests work. Conservation districts are integral in getting that word out.
Well, Joe, we've got another question here from Gary Blair, and he said, would you please discuss the support that Arkansas has received from their national congressional delegation and how support forestry in Arkansas?
Well, you know, I go to bragging again, but we have a very strong congressional delegation, and we have the only forester in Congress, Bruce Westerman, from the 4th District of Arkansas. Is a congressman and a longtime friend of mine. He's been a Forestry Association member. He grew up in a sawmill engineering family firm, and he's more of an engineer. He understands motion time studies and those kinds of things, whether it's a green chain or a log cut-up system. Bruce understands it. He understands, he's a Yale graduate forester, and he understands silviculture, and he is a huge help in lobbying Congress on what good forestry means, whether you're in the Western United States, or whether you're in Michigan or Maine or Massachusetts or Mississippi. So we've got Bruce, and then Senator John Bozeman is also very sympathetic, understands forestry. So we've got a great delegation in Arkansas to work on all things forestry, whether it's the Tree and Trees Act or whether it's getting more money for forest stewardship through the state and private arm of the U.S. Forest Service, or whether it's getting more money and helping on NEPA problems with the U.S. Forest Service National Forest System. We're proud of our congressional delegation.
Well, thank you, Joe. And I've been prompted that we're out of time. And if anybody does have any questions, they can send them to Mike Beacom, and he'll get them out to the proper person to get those questions responded to. Again, thank you, Joe, and thank you, Kyle, for your time today on this. And we want to welcome everybody to tune in this afternoon to our other sessions we have.
Thank you, John. That was fun.